Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Big O Podcast. I am your host, Julian Ortiz, and on today's episode, I am joined by a Canadian icon, two-time Olympic Gold Medalist, three-time World Champion Sprinter, and the only person to ever be inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame twice, Mr. Donovan Bailey. Donovan, how are you doing today?
I'm real good, man. It's minus 13 outside in Oakville. Other than that, I mean, the sun is shining, so it looks like the Caribbean. So,
Fair enough. I'm just down,
and I'm glad to be here today.
Awesome. Well, I'm just down the road from you in Mississauga, so I know, the snowfall we just got now mixed with that wind chill. It's a little frightening to go outside. Thankfully, we can stay inside today and not have to leave our homes.
Perfect. Yes, we can.
So we're recording on January 28th, which is Canada's Bell Let's Talk Day. For those of you who are unaware, Bell Let's Talk is focused on engaging Canadians to take action to create positive mental health. As an athlete, partner, and father, can you talk a little bit about your experience with mental health?
You know what? I think that my experience with mental health has always been very positive. I was very fortunate to be surrounded by some great support system. I am a mama's boy, and my father was my best friend when they were both alive. And so, I was surrounded by great support system, my great friends, great coaches. Sports allowed me to kind of expand the ability to be comfortable in socials, in like social circles. So I think those were good. So my personal mental health, I feel it's been very balanced. But I know that it's an incredible disease that's out there, and I know that it affects a lot of people. It affects a lot of athletes. It affects a lot of people who suffer from anxiety, being put in stressful situation, and in light of the pandemic, in light of COVID right now, we're in a very precarious place in life and in society that a lot of people are suffering being inside, suffering not being able to interact with their loved ones, suffering not being able to go to work. So it's definitely a tough time right now. However, I think that we have to remain vigilant and we have to be supportive of each other. And hopefully, for any of those that are out there that are suffering in any way, hopefully that you have some place to reach out and talk to someone.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people who have already been experiencing mental health challenges, this put a further strain on it. And people who have never had any mental health challenges have started to develop it for all of the reasons that you just talked about. And so the initiative of Bell Let's Talk Day, if you need help, talk to someone, check in on your friends. If you're going through something, you're never alone in anything that you do. So it's important that we try to build those support systems. Now, accomplishing the feat of being a world champion, Olympic gold medalist, and world record holder all at the same time, and also being named the sprinter of the decade in the 90s is something that most athletes can only dream of. Now, for someone who worked as a property and marketing consultant and whose love of sports originated with basketball, how did a man from Manchester Parish become one of the world's all-time greatest and most dominant sprinting legends?
Well, I was taught from I was very young. Well, first of all, thank you for that. But I was taught from very young to give whatever I'm doing, just give it my all. And so, as I'd said before, I had an incredible support system, and the people around me didn't set limitations for myself. I knew exactly, when I started training for track and field, I knew what my goal was. I knew that I wanted to be the very best. I also knew I wanted to be a good leader and to help my teammates to also become Olympic champion and world champion. The very first thing that I had to do, growing up, I thought that hard work and being focused, and being dedicated and being disciplined, those are just the principles of achieving goals. But I also had to lead. When I started in track and field in Canada, especially at the international level, I really had to change the mindset of the team. There was a lot of, Canadians really are like great, beautiful, fantastic melting pot. But The only time that we really try to exert ourselves is when we're playing hockey. So
Right.
the junior team, the junior team goes abroad. You go, man, these kids, they got to bring back the gold medal. I mean, the Olympic team, the World Championship team, and for me, it wasn't so. For me, being a leader on the team, it wasn't that far fetched. It wasn't that far fetched from, Wayne or Paul Henderson or any of these other guys that kind of went across the pond to say, hey, we're going to be the best. So I had to change the attitude of the Canadians, of our athletes themselves. Then I had to go out and do it myself. So I had to live by example. And more importantly, I wanted to make sure that we brought things back and we're the very best at what we did.
Now, I talked about, you playing basketball, and you actually played basketball
I
in your
did.
first year at Sheridan College,
Yes.
and you did some track and field and sort of took a little bit of a break in order to go to school and get your degree because, you wanted the things like owning your own house and owning a 911 Porsche. And so it's one of those things where you have to put in the work in order to get it.
Right.
But let's go back to 1990. You're watching athletes compete at the world championships that you beat in high school.
Right.
Did this serve as your motivation to get back into competitive sprinting?
Well, I don't know what it served as, but I tell you what. I mean, working in corporate Canada, I realized that I hated being inside of an office.
Right.
That's the number one thing. I mean, I just didn't. For one, I was just young, and I was young and I was ambitious, but I didn't want to be inside of an office. I just wasn't built for it. I think that I have tons of friends that are in the corporate world, and they could be in the office for 24 hours a day, and I just wasn't one of those guys. And I kind of felt more free when I was outside. So when I saw a couple of the guys competing that were on the national team that I'd beaten in high school, I thought, well, I used to beat them in high school. I'm still in very good shape. I'm still very young. Why can't I just go and beat those guys? So for me, I guess I'm an optimist, and I guess there was always never a shortage of confidence. When I started track part time, I mean, I wasn't a fat guy coming off the couch.
Right.
I played basketball probably 3 to 4 times a week, actually maybe more than that. I was just coming out of college, and Sheridan College, we had won the Canadian Championships. So I wasn't just playing basketball. I was playing
Right.
with a basketball program that was the best in Canada at the time. I was also one of the best sprinters in Canada for my age, all through my teenage years. So sometimes when people talk about, oh my God, you kind of came from nowhere
Right.
to become this guy. And I'm like, no, well, it's not like that. At 7, 8 years old, I was a great sprinter in Jamaica, going to school there. So coming to Canada and transitioning into an athlete here really was an easy thing for me to do. But 1990, it was quite cool. I didn't know how long it was going to take to get to the place that I wanted to get to. But as I mentioned before, the disciplines that I have and the characteristics that I show, that's going to lead to success. I'm going to put that into whatever I do. So I put that into track and field, and that's the story's been told, I guess. I got to the top of the podium to become the first man in history to undisputed first man in history to be those things that you just mentioned.
Now we're gonna come back to first man and fastest man because there's something I want to dive into a little bit later from 1997. But the one thing is, obviously confidence is in no shortage when it comes to you. You're very skilled. You're putting up these numbers. You are in the top tier, and you're not really fully committing to it at the time. And 1992, you don't make the Olympic team. A little bit surprising, especially because you perform. Pardon me?
It was shocking.
It was shocking. I'm sure. I mean, you're performing so well as you lead up to the games, and you connect with a man named Dan Paff, who at the World Championships in Germany, and you begin this partnership with him that saw you make tremendous strides in your sprinting results to increase what you were already doing, including your 1996 accomplishments. What was it like training with Dan, both physically and mentally, and how were you able to become so successful together?
Well, one, Dan is my coach. So sometimes, you hear athletes talk about my former coach. So Dan
Right.
is my coach. So Dan is my coach today. If I call Dan today, we can exchange information about anything. And Dan and I have always had the ability to discuss any topic. And we did that any topic, especially in light of what's happening in a crazy world right now, in every way, whether it's politics, sports, anything. When I connected with Dan, I realized very quickly that he was one of the smartest people that I know. And more importantly, we had a conversation, and the conversations usually is about me challenging him academically on something. And then, of course, him challenging me the same way academically, but also challenging me to see what I can get out of track and field. So we had several conversations about simple things. Dan had some of the mannerisms of my dad, George, and some of those things are, be prepared and be ready to work hard. And so the very first conversation I had with Dan was that he said for me to get all my, whatever it is that was happening outside of sport, get all of those things in order, because
Right.
he expected me to show up to the track to be a sponge, to absorb as much information as possible. And so from that very first conversation, man, it was awesome, because I'm like, I found my guy, and it was going to be great. One of the other first conversations I had with Dan was, he said to me, there's a lot of athletes out there that are always looking for shortcuts. So athletes that have been before me and probably and after me for sure, where they're looking for some sort of pill or
Right.
or the syringe or the advice of a doctor to be excellent at what they do. And he said, if you're looking for that place, this is the wrong place. And I gave him a big hug. And we actually, since that day, we've never had that conversation again. But again, Dan is the smartest guy that I know. He's the guy that he and I could exchange information. If I asked him a question and he didn't know the answer, he would go, and again, you guys live in Google world now. So you can actually, at the click of hit a button and you can get all the information. Dan would go to the library. He would research things through encyclopedias. He would make a phone call to anyone in his network to just find simple information, on biomechanics, on nutrition, on therapy, and all of those things. So the partnership that I had with Dan allowed me to get to the highest level, but also the friendship and the camaraderie that I had with Dan, I still have today. Because I understand that regardless of whatever your age is and whatever heights you have gotten to in the world of success, you're always going to need that guy that stimulates you and that challenges you to be a better you. And Dan is my guy. Dan's that guy.
Now, one of the things Dan had said prior to you guys working together was that he noticed just how much it would affect you when you didn't get to achieve exactly what you were trying to. If you didn't finish first, or you didn't place or perform the same way that you wanted to, you'd get really down on yourself, and it would sort of become your focus. How did he find a way to sort of break that barrier, and how did you change that mentality in taking it one race at a time and then just putting it in the back of your memory to go out and perform your best the next time you're called upon?
Well, I think that sometimes people call that being passionate.
Right.
Well, in some circles, sometimes they'll say arrogant, but I'll
Sure.
say passionate. I don't. If I put work in, I don't like to fail.
Right.
And so one of the conversations that I had with Dan at that time, when he realized that I was so passionate about work and passionate about results, was he would sit me down and we'd talk about the actual work that I put in.
Right.
So if I haven't, so again, it's so easy to have a conversation with an athlete when you can say to them, hey man, do you think that you've put the work in to be the greatest? And again, my father and I would have those conversations about tons of stuff too. It's the same conversation. So Dan and I would have that conversation. And so, yeah, it got to the point that he goes, okay, you know what? Great potential. You're going to be the greatest. So great support there. He said, you know what? We need to work on some few things. We need to put a work in, so ultimately for me, it was about Dan and I having a discussion about my passion and my passion to win and my passion for hard work. But his conversation and motivation to me was to let me know that I hadn't put in enough work yet. And
Right.
not only did he tell me that, but we got to work every day, any hours of the day, we got to work every day. And he was working on improving himself and also helping me to improve every hour of every single day that I was with him.
Listen, that's a great mentor, that's a great coach, and that's how, people find ways when they meet that right person to exceed to the best and highest levels of whatever they're trying to achieve. Now, we talked about this a little bit when I go into the 1997 sort of drama between Michael Johnson and yourself. But before we even get there, you talked about Canada going overseas or playing at home when it comes to hockey. The expectation is that we bring home gold and are recognized globally as a hockey powerhouse. Now, in track and field, that wasn't the case early on, maybe a little bit more as, we start to develop our Canadian program. That has sort of changed. But despite your success at the 1996 Olympic Games, in some people's eyes, mainly the US media, the title of fastest man in the world, an honor normally bestowed to the winner of the 100-meter sprint, was given to Michael Johnson, winner of the 200-meter race. As is the case with most Canadian successes on a global stage, most recently the 2019 Toronto Raptors winning the NBA championship, the idea that accomplishments are less worthy sort of fit their narrative when Canada succeeds in something they're not supposed to. Before we get to what comes next, what did you feel was the major contributing factor when this major news story broke? Because this was sort of headlines in both in the United States as well as Canada.
Well, it was headlines in the world,
Right.
actually. You know what? You said something that's really important. You said narrative, and I think that that's really all it was. Sometimes you have media houses and reporters that choose to ignore facts.
Sure.
And so that becomes news. Obviously, we have adapted the two words called fake news now. However, in 1997, I guess that was it. One, factual, for me running north of 27 miles an hour and Michael running 22. Now, anyone who knows math knows that that's an impossible race to make. I mean,
right.
It's like a 7-foot basketball player playing against a 5-foot basketball player. It's just not good.
Right.
Also, I had competed against Michael before, so it really wasn't. It really was never going to be a race. But the narrative suited a lot of people, and for us, we just bought into it because we looked at it as an economic opportunity.
Right.
That's really all it was for us. I mean, and it was probably one of those times that, me being the number one sprinter in the world, I was not going to back down from anyone, regardless of who they were and what they were talking about. I had beaten Michael in the 100 meters, so I wasn't really concerned with Michael with a race. Mind you, respect Michael, one of the greatest 400-meter man who ever lived, one of the greatest speed endurance sprinters that ever lived. But he's not a power sprinter, and it was never going to be a race. I mean, I knew that in the first 10 meters,
right,
the race was going to be over. Like, I knew this, but the world didn't. And so, I thought that let me be part of the promotion. Let me become an athlete owner.
Right.
Was one of the, so for me, it became a business and an economic opportunity, to do something different. Very much like you have, I see you have a McGregor poster behind you, but I'm just saying he's a co-promoter in some of his events. Floyd Mayweather, so at that time, and again, way before people even dreamt of this, I really just wanted to be an owner of something. So I understood the inner workings of business. So it was just an economic opportunity on the backs of the negative narrative of a few people who felt that they could get to market, and I guess some way or another I would back down, or I wouldn't say what was on my mind. And so unfortunately, Michael was a victim of the race that day. I mean, he lost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity, I think, for he and I to showcase our ability at the highest stage. But I was never gonna back down, or I've never felt, walking into the race or before that or after that, I've never felt that I was secondary to him or to anybody else.
Now, you mentioned it earlier. You described yourself as, passionate, and you just mentioned even right there, you were never going to back down. So let's go to the day, Sunday, June 1st, 1997, the place, the Sky Dome, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I was 9 at the time and in attendance at the Sky Dome with my mom for the 150-meter race to crown the fastest man in the world. As most people know, you convincingly win this race and have some choice words for your competitor, who in most people's eyes pulled up with an apparent injury. It's one of my favorite sports moments because of the raw emotion and passion coursing through your veins at the time. You famously said post-race, and I quote, "He didn't pull up at all. He's just a chicken. He's afraid to lose. I think what he should know, we should run this race over again so I could kick his ass one more time," end quote. A media clip that might very well be enshrined into the Sports Trash Talk Hall of Fame. Take us back to the event. What were your emotions like immediately after the race concluded? And 24 years later, do you still think he took the easy way out?
Well, so to that day, like I said, the race was over in the first 10 meters. So I really didn't worry about that. I mean, Michael has had a habit of, when he's pressed, if he doesn't have the speed, he does not genetically doesn't have that.
Right.
So I don't know what happened. He said that there was a cramp on one leg. I mean, for me, it was irrelevant. It was never going to be a race anyways. So,
right.
So how I handled the situation, that was how I felt. There was, I think we as athletes, there's a camera in your face when you're at work. And sometimes when you talk to anyone, and it doesn't matter what job you have, if there's a camera around you all the time, most likely, at some point during your work day, you're going to be pissed off at someone or at something, so there was a lot of chirping that was happening leading up to that. There was chirping from 1996 anyway. So I had a year of frustrations. Michael had said a lot of things. I said, I didn't say much actually leading up to that. So at the Sky Dome, really, I just wanted to, just to beat him and to move on to race Linford Christie in the UK, Frankie in Japan, so I really, and I think we're supposed to have another race in Vegas, which got canceled because Michael opted out of it.
Right.
So for me, the raw emotions that happened is what happened. It happened. I apologize. I'm the only person in history that had to apologize because I swore the swear word that I used was chicken. Chicken. That's what I said. a word that's used. I know I did say ass, which is also an animal, but I'm saying to you that I'm the only person that's ever been penalized for using ass and chicken, which is. I mean, I and even in the context that it was said, it's still okay. I mean, I did apologize because clearly you said you were 9 years old, and as a role model, and as an athlete, you want to show your best face,
right?
And maybe I should have taken a deep breath before I responded, but as you said, that's probably one of the Mount Rushmore Hall of Fame quotes, post game quotes.
For sure.
So I'm happy to have that. I mean, but I have to tell you, I do respect Michael. Definitely a great champion, but he was not going to be.
It's interesting because my mom, who grew me up playing sports and athletics. And I mean, my track and field days were, probably when I was 9 years old, I came in first at one track meet and I got
That's
blown
okay.
out by somebody, but it
That's
was a fun
okay.
time. But my mom was like your biggest, we said this before the podcast. My mom is like your biggest fan. And despite the comments, my mom told me that when someone is giving you a hard time or when people is coming at you, you stand your ground. You
Right.
don't back down from a fight. You don't start a fight, but you never back down from a fight.
There you go.
And so like you said, a lot of chirping, a lot of trash talking, and you were never going to back down. And I feel that when you have the adrenaline pumping and the testosterone is flowing, whether it's track and field, we've seen it in football, we've seen it in almost every sport. If you stick a microphone in someone's face immediately after, before people can calm down, you're going to get a response like that. I think what people are more shocked about is that it came from a Canadian, because
Right.
if it came from an American or someone else, it's passion, you get it.
Anyone else.
But this global icon, this Canadian guy,
Mhm.
called him a chicken, said he was going to kick his ass again. And I think sometimes people mistake Canadians' kindness for weakness.
Right.
And on that day, no one mistook anything that you said. And I love it. It's one of my, favorite things. I'd put it on your list of accomplishments because you put Canada on a map, whether it was your performance, whether it was
Right.
what you said, whether it was how you held yourself. You put Canada and the world on notice and say, hey, we're here. We're not going to get pushed around. Don't try that with me.
Well, absolutely. I mean, but here's the thing. So, I break the world record, and I accomplished something. It's not like I'm a trailblazer here. So no one
Right.
has done what I've done. So you get to 1997, and still I'm wearing the Canadian badge. And
Yep.
so going into the 150, I actually felt like I was being bullied. And sometimes when I speak to people, I say this. I mean, it does. There's no Michael certainly wasn't bullying me, or
Right.
the media was bullying me. I'm just saying to you about a feeling. I felt I was being bullied. So I'm like, okay, let me work hard. Let me get this done. And just like you said, it's the same advice I give to my kids, or if I speak to kids right now. One, don't start a fight. The dumbest thing in the world is start a fight, because if you start a fight, you're the bully and you need to be punished, right? However, if someone comes up to you and punches you in the face, drop them,
That's it.
right? And so that's the advice I give to I give that to my sons. I'm telling you this. I mean, I gave that to my daughter when she was a teenager. I'm like, don't ever start a fight. And so that's my athlete mentality, and that's also my mentality as a man, but also as a father. I mean, and so in 1997, I was representing Canada. I had Canada on my back. And so I had a slew of Canadians watching. Like you said, you're 9 years old, and there's, a couple of million, kids watching this. And I want to make sure that every single kid know that, one, they have a support system in the Canadian sports system, that they can become the very best, but also don't back down from anyone. And certainly, if you feel like you're getting bullied, yeah, man, it's absolutely, I will be in your corner 100%. So yeah, the race was significant in that way, but I think the outpouring of support from like Canadian fans, but global sports fans, was spectacular, and we certainly have used that, hopefully, to change the thinking of a lot of generation of people your age, where you see now you have incredible hockey guys who leave from here and go to the NCAA system, or go straight to the NHL. You see
Right.
a ton of Canadian basketball players. Like, what I love is like basketball players who leave Canada, go to the US, to the college system, and then they're number 1 and number 2 draft choices.
Right.
You see people like, football players. Listen, you see people like Drake, like Cardinal Official. You see musicians. You see people that say, hey, man, I'm Canadian. I rep being Canadian.
Yep.
I love being Canadian, but I'm going to lay it down. So get out of my way. Right. And so if this inspired a generation of people that believe that they should be successful and they work hard to get to that place, and that they should be the best and they're better than everyone else, and they should be able to be confident and talk about it, then God, so be it. I guess my job was done on that day.
100%. I mean, you talked about, your mentality as a father and the advice you give. For me, it must be an island thing because my grandparents, my mom's side of the family from Trinidad, my grandma said, if someone hits you, you hit them back twice as hard. So they know not to do it again. And so, I take what you said and what my grandma said as a thing. You don't start something,
Never.
but you always finish it. And that's how I teach my daughter. She's, going to be 4 in May.
Right.
My thing is, if someone does something to you, you make sure that you don't start something, but you always defend yourself because you don't let anyone ever walk over you. Now, you talked about being a trailblazer. And so I want to ring off a few things here.
Okay.
In addition to the world championships and the gold medals, you hold some other pretty prestigious milestones, including the fastest top speed ever recorded in history at 27.07 miles per hour, not kilometers, miles per hour, only surpassed by Usain Bolt. The indoor 50-meter world record time of 5.56 seconds, a record that still stands to this day. Inducted into Canada Sports Hall of Fame twice, in 2004 as an individual, in 2008 as part of the 1996 4x100 Summer Olympic Relay Team. In 2016, you were made a member of the Ontario Order, and in 2017, got your star on the Canada Walk of Fame. Out of all of your accomplishments, on and off the track, which one means the most to you?
Oh God, like none of those things, man, for real. I mean, because I think that my job here is not done yet. So
right.
I've also not been someone who's, like for instance, the Olympic 100-meter final or to be the champion is something like what Tiger Woods would look at as like a Masters championship.
Right.
So you look at those things as work. Now, a lot of the things that you rang out are things that were voted on by my peers or voted on by people who think that I've accomplished all those things and I deserve to be there. But I think that my number one achievement for me really is I want to be a good father. I mean, I want to be a good father. I want to be, and I want to make sure that my time here is used positively. I want to use my voice, to eradicate racism and social injustices in the world. I want to be able to just do good. That's really my whole thing. And I will continue to I'll continue to work. I'll continue to do business. But I think that I had the legacy of having a great father that I love, and so I just want to do that for my children. So I had there's certainly a bag of accolades that's been read off, and I think those are all awesome. And I'm sure, hopefully, I'll get 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 more before I die. But I think that ultimately for me, I definitely want to be a great father and a great role model for people like yourself, or younger people. They can look at themselves and say that they can do anything that they want to do. They can accomplish anything. So these are things that I want to focus on.
Speaking of focusing on things off the track, since your retirement, you've created the Bailey Foundation, the focus of which is to bring attention to causes and charitable organizations close to your heart, which includes some recent initiatives of, the Bailey School Build in Jamaica, youth mentorship and leadership, prostate cancer research, and Alzheimer's research. What does it mean to you to be able to help out these causes?
Yeah, I mean, I funny enough, I didn't just talk about that. I mean, that's the number one thing for me. I mean, I was personally affected with Alzheimer's. My mom passed from complications from Alzheimer's. My dad passed away from cancer, not prostate cancer, but cancer. But I also had 2 uncles that passed away from prostate cancer. So those are 2 of the initiatives that I will always help, using my platform to either raise money and raise awareness. As far as leadership and children, that's a given. That's something I've lived my life for. and I will continue to do that. And of course, if I can participate and we can build schools around the country, around the Caribbean, around the world, that's something I'll always do, because I think that education is the number one thing that every single person in the world deserves to have, as well as they deserve to have a mentor and for someone to follow them, at least, follow in their footsteps so they can be productive members of society.
Now I want to switch gears a little bit, because I mean, obviously I love what you're doing with the foundation. It's incredible. And we talked about this a little bit when it comes to the shine of Canadian athletes. Now let's focus on your sport that you were such a mainstay and an icon for. When it comes to sports movies, track and field doesn't get the love it likely deserves when it comes to motion pictures, documentaries. Yes, tons of great documentaries out there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to movies like Race or McFarland USA or even Chariots of Fire, there have been stories told on the big screen, but it seems to be missing the gold medal performance. Do you think there is an appetite for a track and field blockbuster movie? And if so, and given the choice, what would you choose as far as a story to tell?
Well, first of all, we talked about narrative before. I cannot stand when there's negative narratives. I cannot stand that every athlete has to go through, a single parent, and they grew up in the ghetto and they were dodging bullets and all those things. And I think that it is time that a proper story is told. It's time that, one of the things I love even about, in recent times, and this is great timing, is The Last Dance, Michael Jordan. Now, I want to, now at the end of the day, there's so many incredible stories that there's a hero there, and it's a Black hero, and someone needs to get used to that. And yes, someone is a legend and an icon and a hero, and he's Black. Now, I know that about my story. I know that. Right. So at the end of the day, I want to see, I want the story to be told that doesn't have the narrative of negativity. Most kids in Canada grew up like me. Right. With the love of mom, with the love of dad, whether or not they're together or not, they grew up with the love of their parents. They grew up in a community where they could go to school and they could they could get educated. They played sports. And something, within them and the support system got to the place where they become very successful. So that is like 99% of most Canadians. So I don't like negative narrative of people, especially when it comes to Black success or success of color, we'll say, because certainly there's some Indigenous people that have done some incredible things, and other people. I mean, there's tons of other people, but I don't like when there's any negative narratives of people of color. And so I think that there's an absolute appetite for heroism, of every color, every gender, everything. I mean, we live in a world right now where it really is about equity and and equality. So I think it's about time that, first of all, at some point they have to make a proper documentary about me. And the things that I've done. There was something that was done a couple of years ago, but this was from the mind of a very local director that I gave an opportunity to create something spectacular. But you can't create something spectacular if you don't know it and if you're not been around it. So that was the result of that piece that was done, which I think is terrible, right? So I think that it is high. To answer your question in short form, hell yes, it is high time that a proper documentary is told. I think that if someone told the real story of someone like Edwin Moses, like a proper documentary, it'd be incredible. Even Michael Johnson, a proper documentary. Carl Lewis, proper documentary. My Story, a proper documentary. Linford Christie, proper documentary. Usain Bolt, my God. Like, I'm saying to you that, like, if it's told how it's supposed to be, then I mean, it's incredible. Like, when you look at you think there's a media contract with, and this is just business, this is a side note. There's media contract that the International Olympic Committee has for $1 billion. Now the
Jeez.
reason why the NBA is so incredible is because they're very transparent about the money they make. So
Right.
imagine Usain Bolt getting a share of the audience and the TV ratings that he brings to the Olympic Games, or I did, or Linford did, or Carl did, or Michael did. Now, I mean, that's business, but you have to
Yeah.
think about it on that side when you're thinking of stardom, and you're also thinking about people of color.
100%. I mean, just bringing it back to what you talked about as far as the narrative movies being, shooting or drugs or single parent, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. One of my favorite sports movies is from 2000, the year 2000, Love and Basketball.
Right.
Great story. Didn't have anything about, drugs or shootings, and really was about Monica being the one who becomes successful in the WNBA, and Quentin, who was a star basketball player, being that like sort of stay-at-home dad. So way before its time, something we would expect to see now, but 20 years ago, it was incredible, and I love that because of it. You didn't worry about anything other than basketball and the passion that came along with it.
Feel
So
good story, man. Incredible
it
feel good story, incredible feel good story. And it's also was then about equality and
yeah,
women's success.
100%.
And the fact is that we should think about role reversals in the house. So I mean, like the even to this day, like the fact that you watched it, and this from 2000 when you're very young. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, that's just teaching a life lesson as to what it is that we can do and what we should do.
Right.
In society right now, which is so we're finally at a place right now where people are having conversations and listening, which is great.
Now, listen, I know we're pressed for time. I'm going to ask you one more question to get you out of here. As an Olympian, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the situation surrounding the 2020-2021 Summer Olympic Games that are supposed to take place in Tokyo. First off, given the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that go into training and preparing for an Olympic Games, what are your first thoughts when you heard the Games would be postponed?
Oh, man. Okay, first of all, let me address what you just started. You said an Olympian, Olympic champion. That's always...
Sorry. Yes.
Olympians are my fans. Anyway,
right.
Anyways, Julian, listen, when I first heard it was going to be canceled, it was very disheartening for me, and I wasn't even competing. I understand. We spoke earlier in the broadcast here about mental health, and there's a lot of dedication that's put into an athlete's life. I think that for those people who don't really understand, you live it and breathe it every hour of every single day until that moment that you can show what you can do on your field of play. So it was very, very, I was obviously disappointed. But again, we have to look at, we have to look at, the health of our athletes. One of the things I commended David Shoemaker, who was the new CEO of the Canadian Olympic Committee, to become one of the first CEOs to pull the athletes back. So you know what? It's not worth risking your health to represent the country. So we're going to pull back, and we're going to put our team. We're going to pull our teams out. But it's obvious that it was certainly a strain. Excuse me. It was certainly a strain on the athletes. However, one of the things that we have learned is obviously to be versatile and to pivot. So a lot of these young athletes have been able to train. A lot of them have not been able to compete, for a year. And a lot of them have had very limited competition in a year. What other sports have taught us in boxing, basketball, certainly football, is that you can actually put on sporting events without fans. Now, fans for me are such a huge part of the Olympic Games. I actually don't even understand if fans are going to be there or what that's going to look like when it happens. So I can't even, there's such a different vortex and a different feeling and a different tension when you have a fan, when you have stadiums to the rafters, just like in 1997 at the Sky Dome or the Atlanta or many times that I competed in that environment. But you know what? The great thing about it is athletes are very resilient. They understand what the goals are. I'm definitely looking forward to cheering on the kid, Andre DeGrasse and Aaron Brown and the relay team and the ladies that are on that side. I mean, and our basketball team that's going. I mean, whatever. I'm looking forward to what it is that they're going to do, because I know that a lot of them actually want to compete because it's been so long.
Right.
And I expect that they're going to go and they're going to shine and they're going to be prepared to do something spectacular. And for me, from my desk at CBC, I hope that I hear the Canadian anthem quite a bit from the performances of these great young kids that we have representing our country in 2021.
Listen, Donovan, that was perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. It was both an honor and a pleasure speaking with you. If people wanted to follow along on some of the things that you're doing, where can they find you?
They can find me on all the social media platforms. So at Donovan Bailey, I think on the Twitter, and the official Donovan Bailey at Instagram, something like that. Just yes, just get on. You look it up and you tell them.
Okay, perfect. I'll post it in the description. Amazing. The Big O Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you choose to get your podcasts, with full-length video episodes on YouTube. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow for future episodes. For my guest, Donovan Bailey, I'm your host, Julian Ortiz. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a great day, everybody.